Gracias por estar, gracias por estar con nosotros en esta sesión que va a ser principalmente en inglés y contamos con interpretación al español. Esto es en gran parte gracias a la generosidad de nuestros miembros contribuyentes, a quienes agradecemos mucho. Esta sesión es una de dos que hemos hecho esta semana, que en respuesta a las inquietudes, a las preocupaciones que nos ha expresado el personal a la luz de las situaciones que estamos viviendo este mes específicamente en la organización. De manera que espero que sea muy productiva, que todos salgamos más tranquilos, mejor informados, sobre todo. Para presentar un poco más en detalle la sesión, quiero darle la palabra al doctor Dante Negro, que es nuestro representante, es decir, el representante del personal en la Comisión de Jubilaciones y Pensiones. También va a estar con nosotros Mari Wenecki, que es el representante alterno. Y finalmente, quiero también agradecer a nuestros colegas del Fondo de Jubilaciones y Pensiones de la Tesorería, a Janet Carmona, a Daniel Vilariño y al doctor Bill Berenson por estar con nosotros. Muchas gracias nuevamente y Dante, por favor.
Bueno, muchas gracias, señor presidente del Comité del Personal. Muy buenos días con todas, con todos. Para mí es un gusto poder estar en esta sesión acompañado de todos ustedes. Estamos viviendo algunos momentos bastante difíciles, bastante caóticos, podríamos decir, porque existe una coyuntura en que la información que nosotros obtengamos el día de hoy no solamente va a ser importante para saber qué tenemos enfrente, sino que en muchos casos también para estar un poco más tranquilos y seguir trabajando en apoyarnos mutuamente para que los eventuales efectos de cualquier decisión que se tome dentro de la organización nos afecte lo menos posible. Gracias por estar presente, gracias por su interés. Esta va a ser una perfecta ocasión para poder ocuparnos de muchas de estas dudas, preocupaciones y preguntas que ustedes tengan. El día de hoy nos acompaña Janet Carmona. Ella es la secretaria tesorera interina de nuestro Fondo de Jubilaciones y Pensiones, a quien agradezco muchísimo también por la presentación que nos va a hacer el día de hoy. Ella está acompañada por dos personas a quienes ustedes conocen muy bien, William Berenson y Daniel Vilariño. Ellos actualmente trabajan como consultores en el Fondo de Pensiones y Jubilaciones, Bill Berenson en la parte legal y Daniel Vilariño, como todos ustedes saben, él fue nuestro tesorero secretario del fondo, así que con toda la experiencia acumulada en los últimos años va a ser de gran ayuda en esta sesión. También nos acompaña Martín Hueneke, él es el representante suplente del Comité del Personal ante el Fondo, quien va a estar dirigiendo la sección de preguntas y respuestas y quien nos va a indicar a continuación cuál va a ser la metodología de este encuentro. Entonces, simplemente agradeciéndoles a todos y comprometiéndonos una vez más a trabajar junto con ustedes para poder salir adelante de estos tiempos, estas coyunturas que a lo mejor se presentan desafiantes, pero que estoy seguro vamos a poder salir adelante todos juntos. Mari, te dejo entonces la palabra. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Dante, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. As Dante mentioned, there will be a question and answer session just after the presentation. So I would encourage participants, if they do have questions, specific questions, or requests to take the floor to ask your question, that you put those in the chat, either during or after the presentation of Jeanette's presentation this morning, and then we will address them in the order that they're received. We had also requested for persons if they wanted to send questions in advance, and we have received some of those. We did receive some questions, and the fund office has attempted to answer those. So I will also be posting those questions in the chat right away, and we can go through those as well. And so I would just then encourage everyone to to feel free to ask your questions, and we hope that today's session proves helpful for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Jaime, and thank you, Dante, for your intro. I'm going to share my screen so that I can start my presentation. So bear with me as I get that to share and start for you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Hide this. Okay. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And I want to thank the Staff Association for coordinating this informational session. I think it's going to be very informative and helpful to you. And along with me today, in addition to Bill Berenson and Danielle Villarino that were already introduced, I have members of the Pension Fund office here with us, and that's Francisco Llosa and Jenny Torres. Many of you may already know them, others may not. They are our benefit specialists. They can help you with any requests and questions you have as well as I can. So just wanted to, bring that information and just let you know, who we have in our office at this time. So here is, myself as the interim secretary treasurer. I also included on this slide Dante Negro and Martin Uneke, who are our principal and alternative representative of the participants to the pension committee. Before we dive into some of the questions that many of you are really anxious to get answered or want to hear more about, I wanted to give you a little bit of the strength of our pension fund. I'll take a few minutes just to kind of talk about where the fund is, and then we can deep dive into some of the questions. So I wanted to let you know that the plan remains strong and financially sound. The plan does operate independently, and that ensures that our management and our oversight are solely focused on protecting the participants and the retirees' interest. And our investment and funding strategies are designed to provide long-term sustainability to our fund and giving you confidence in your retirement benefits. So who we are. The OES Retirement and Pension Fund is a fund that was established in 1928, so we are almost 100 years old, and it is a trust, and it administers pension benefits for the OES and affiliated organizations. Those affiliated organizations are the AIDB, CATIE, the Corte, and ICA. And just to give you a little bit of a better understanding, the pension fund, like I mentioned, is a trust, which means that it's a legal arrangement where money is managed for the benefit of the participants, retirees, and their beneficiaries. The pension committee, the fund secretariat, are the group of trustees responsible for managing the money wisely. Since it's a trust, the money must be used for the benefit of employees or the participants and the retirees, and it just can't be taken or used for any other purpose. On the right hand of the slide, it shows how many we are currently serving. So we're currently serving approximately 550 participants and almost 300 retirees. On this next slide, we show a 12-year history of the number of participants in the retirement and pension plan. And you can see that over to the right in 2024, we're almost at our highest. And between 2017 and 2024, we have 20% more participants in the fund. This next slide is the number of participants in the Provident Plan. So the Provident Plan is more of a savings type plan in our fund. And this plan fluctuates as far as participation year over year due to the expectation that participants in this plan are staff members who may be employed for a short period of time. My next slide here is the number of annuitants or retirees that we serve. So here's a 12-year history, and you can see that we have steadily grown as far as participation as pensioners. And the fund has steadily increased over this time period, which tells us as a fund that more participants are leaving the organization taking a pension or an annuity rather than taking a lump sum at retirement. The next few slides talk about our funded status. So our funded status as of the end of 2024, that's probably about the third quarter of 2024, we were 93% funded. And the funded status gives us a key indicator of the health of the pension fund. And the funded status, what that actually means, or the funded ratio, is the percentage of assets that we have available to cover all current and future obligations. What this means is that we have 93 cents for every dollar of benefits owed, ensuring that we can meet our obligations to the participants and the retirees. So this level of funding at 93 is strongly positioned in comparison to industry benchmarks, and it reflects our well-advised financial management. We'd also like to inform you that our operating costs remain low. Our operating costs are about 0.5% of the fund's net assets. And in addition to that, the investment management fees that we pay to our financial managers and advisors is 0.1% of the fund's fair value of investments. This next slide shows the funded ratio over a 7-year period, and the amounts represented on the top here of each of the years are our funded status at the end of each year. In 2021, you can see that we were overfunded. We were at a 107%, and which is, of course, the best case scenario. And we were hit hard in 2022 when the financial markets took a downturn, and our funded ratio was at 77%. But since then, the markets have recovered, and we have steadily increased since then. So how do we maintain our stability? We diversify our investments, and we have a carefully managed team to help balance our growth and risks, ensuring stable returns over the lifetime. We have regular monitoring of the fund, where we have external audits prepared. We have actuarial studies. We have asset liability studies, and that ensures our optimal performance. And we have a long-term commitment to our retirees and, of course, our participants. And our goal is to not just have stability in the short term, but ensure that the plan remains strong for decades to come. Oops, sorry, my mouse is a little sensitive. Bear with me. Thank you so much. The chart here on the right shows the fund's asset allocations. The committee reviews periodically this distribution to optimize the portfolio performance. As you can see, we are in this large blue shaded area. The orange and the gray shows that we're 70% invested in equities. Over here to the left, we're 25% vested in fixed income securities. And up here at the top in this very light peach color, we're invested in 5% in real estate, which is fairly diversified portfolio, and it provides us, like I mentioned earlier, long-term sustainability. On this next slide, it shows our fund's rate of return over periods of time. So if you look here to the left, you'll see that the year to date in 2024 is 12.14%. And just to make sure it's clear to you, the blue represents the fund's rate of return. The orange represents the benchmarks that we use to evaluate how our fund is doing. And as you can see, year to date, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10-year averages, as well as since inception, we've pretty much met our benchmarks. And over time, you can see that since inception, of course, inception meaning not 1928, but at least for the last 20, 30 years, what our fund has returned in investing our money, and that's almost 10%. So it's at 9.08%. So what does this mean for you? It means that our pension benefits remain secure and unaffected by short-term market fluctuations. And we're committed to be transparent to you and provide regular updates on the plan's financial status. And that the retirement fund incorporates the sharing of risks, pooling of our investments, which allows the plan to provide a comprehensive range of benefits, including retirement, disability, and survivorship benefit at a very cost-effective manner. Okay, so the next section, or part 2 of this presentation, we'll talk about rights and options for plan participants when their services are paused or upon separation from service. Okay, first question. What happens if a participant leaves the OAS before completing the required years of service for 100% vesting? And that's going to be answered on this next slide, which also answers how vesting works. If the participant leaves the General Secretariat or an affiliated institution before retirement, they will receive 100% of their personal credit, which is their own contributions made, plus the interest that's accrued on those contributions. A percentage of the institutional credit, or the employer's contribution, plus accrued interest, is based on years of participation. So if you've been in the fund for less than 4 years, you will be credited with 35% of the institutional credit, plus your 100% of your personal credit. And as every year goes on, 4 years, your institutional credits are vested at 40%, 5 years, it's 60%, 6 years, it's 80%. And once you're in the plan for 7 or more years, you're 100% vested. And that is how, when you take out your money or when you leave the organization before the 7 years, your vesting takes into account what you actually get as your lump sum. Now, there is a rule and regulation in our plan and codified regulations where separation against participants' desire is addressed. So this is where someone is separated from the organization, what we call against their desire. This would mean in this situation, if a participant has fewer than 7 years of service and is separated against their will, they may receive 100% of both the personal and institutional credits, regardless of the vesting schedule. Keep in mind, if a staff member's contract expires, this information no longer applies. This case will apply if a staff member is terminated against their will prior to the expiration of their contract. It also ensures that the participant must maintain good conduct. And it also means that if they receive this benefit, the participant is not technically retiring from the fund. They're being terminated from the organization, and then they get their lump sum. The next question, who is eligible for a lump sum? Simple answer here is anyone in the retirement or provident plan who leaves the General Secretariat or an affiliated institution is eligible for a lump sum dependent on the vesting schedule that we, went over a few slides prior. Who can take a pension? Anyone in the retirement plan who leaves the General Secretariat or an affiliated institution is eligible to take a pension as long as these two conditions are met. 1, they must reach the age of 55 or older. And 2, participate in the retirement plan for 15 years or more. Now, as you can imagine, there are so many different scenarios that can happen between, for example, the age of 55 and mandatory retirement of 65. Every case is different. I wasn't going to include that in this presentation, but please feel free to reach out to our office if you're curious about any of this information that may be particular to you. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the Rule of 85 many, many times. I'm just going to show this slide. The Rule of 85 is particularly specific to our formula, our 2% formula pension. So in order to calculate the Rule of 85, you must add your years of participation in the retirement plan plus your age. If that is equal to or greater than 85, you have met the Rule of 85, which means you can take a full pension without an actuarial reduction using the 2% formula. Now, if you reach the age of 65, you don't have to meet the Rule of 85 because 65 is the mandatory retirement, and that formula no longer applies because you have reached the full age and you will get your full pension. Okay. Our next topic of interest is leave without pay. Okay, so I know that this is an interesting topic for many on this call, and I'll talk a little bit about what our plan rules and regulations regarding leave without pay states. So I'm summarizing it on this slide. So if a participant can take up to 6 months of leave without pay without being required to make a contribution to the fund. Now, these first 6 months will still count towards your total length of participation in a fund. So your time as participation in the fund will not be affected in the first 6 months. If the leave extends beyond the 6 months, this additional time will only count towards your participation if both the participant and the employer portion of the contributions are paid to the fund. You can also choose to not make the participant or institutional contributions, but if that is the choice to not make any of the contributions, those months will not count towards the length of your participation. It pretty much gets skipped when you return back to work from your leave. Anything beyond the first 6 months will be skipped, and then you'll continue once you return with counting the years of participation in your account. Now, the next slide tells us a little bit about what happens when there's a break in service or no break in service, because if we don't have, there is no break in service if a person decides to continuously make a payment after the first 6 months. There will be no break in service. But what really goes into effect when there are no contributions made after the first 6 months is what we call the final average remuneration. So this final average remuneration is used to calculate the benefit and formula. Now, for any period of leave without pay where neither the participant nor the employer contributions are made, this will not be counted when determining the final average remuneration. So it might affect some participants by the period without contribution, and depending on how many more years the participant has until retirement, it may or may not affect the final value of your pension. Each situation is different for each participant. Therefore, if you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to our office. Now, leave without pay contributions during the leave here are some of also our rules. The contributions to the fund are expected to be paid monthly. Now, if they're not paid monthly and the participant decides to pay the contributions after they come back from leave, you must also pay any accrued interest that have been applied to the account. Only full month leave periods will be recognized for this process. So no partial month contributions or no partial months, I think, will not be counted towards this rule. Regarding interest accreditation while on leave without pay, it's important to note that each participant account continues to earn interest just like any other participant account, even while they're on leave without pay. So you'll continue to earn interest accreditations while on leave without pay. Okay, the next slide is regarding a question that was posed. What happens to participants that participated in the 401(m), then join the retirement and pension plan and leave the organization before they're fully vested? I guess this is a twofold question. I'll start with if you're in the retirement plan now, but have less than 5 years in the plan, and you must leave the organization. What will happen is you will leave taking a lump sum with just your vested portion, whatever is just vested, and then you would take whatever you have in your 401(m), and that would be, I guess, your case. Now, if you have at least 5 years in the retirement and pension fund, you can buy up to 5 years of service credits for the time you've previously participated in the 401(m) or the Provident Plan. And this means essentially that you can increase your service credits in the plan, which boosts your vesting and also boosts your retirement benefits. Now, if you were previously in the retirement and pension fund, left the organization, took a lump sum, and now you've returned, you may also purchase back your years of participation in the retirement and pension plan, but there is no up to 5 years of credits purchased. You can purchase all of your credits from your previous participation in the plan, even if it was more than 5 years. So how does the purchase of service credit work? This is a calculation that our office would perform for you. So if you're interested in purchasing any credits, please feel free to reach out to the pension fund office. But at a minimum, you must pay the total contributions, which is your share plus the organizational share that would have been made for that time period, plus any interest accredited during that same time period in the fund. And like I said, please come to our office. We can certainly provide to you the calculation should you be interested in purchasing any service credits. Next question is, can a participant of the retirement and pension plan use the balance of their retirement fund account as collateral for an emergency loan? I'll first respond by saying our fund does not issue any loans against your retirement account, but we, meaning the pension office, has an agreement with the Federal Credit Union, the OES Federal Credit Union, where loans can be available to members using the members' retirement account as collateral. On the right-hand side of this slide, I provided you where in the website to find that information. So when you enter the Federal Credit Union's website, if you go to loans, you scroll down to OES, ECA, and other SEGs, and then you would hit click on this very first one, OES Retirement and Pension Plan Loan. And from there, you can apply for a loan and look at all the information related to that program. Please feel free to contact the Federal Credit Union for any specific questions regarding any loans against your retirement plan. Okay. This does conclude the presentation I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you found it helpful and informative. If you have any questions or requests, please feel free to reach out to our office email on the right-hand side of this screen. And if you do prefer to, shall I say, we prefer that you use the first email address here on file. But if you do not wish to ask any confidential questions to our oes.org email address, we also have our Gmail address here below to send us any emails. I have provided my email as well as the access to our website on this slide. Like I said, we're happy to take any questions that you have during this presentation, but also if any questions come up after the presentation, and if you feel that your question is very specific, we're happy to answer any and all questions that you have. Please keep in mind, as of recently, our office has been experiencing many requests, questions. We also have, of course, our year-end procedures happening for our audit, our actuarial studies, and the like. So we may not respond to you maybe in a few hours, but keep in mind, we always respond within 24 hours. And we can always meet with you, have a Teams meeting with you, or answer your questions via email. So I'll stop here. And I know that Martin is going to help me monitor through the Q&As in the chat. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeanette, very much for that comprehensive and very helpful presentation. I'm going to now start going through the questions that we've received both prior to the session, today's session, and those that we've received during the presentation. I started to post some, and we were also receiving other questions during, so I'll just try to go through in order. So I'll start at the top here with the first question, which is, my question is regarding paying taxes at the time of retirement. Having been a staff member with the G4 visa for several years and then an American resident for the last 2 years, are taxes only paid on contributions made from the date of change of status to permanent resident? And the answer that was provided to this question, which again was sent in advance, was correct. Taxes are paid on institutional contributions at the time the participant changes status to permanent resident. Participant contributions are tax-free to U.S. taxpayers. The interest accrued on both participant and institutional contributions will be taxable. I don't know if anyone from the fund wanted to add further to that question.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory already.
Great. And then the next question received from LM Gomez was, ¿se necesita el 100% de reserva para la acreditación del fondo? Is 100% of the reserve for need for accreditation of the fund?
Sorry, I was on mute. Francisco, I think you were chiming in, but I just wanted the question repeated. My apologies.
Yes, I don't think I understand the question 100%. Maybe a little bit more specific when it says se necesita el 100% de reserva para la acreditación del fondo. When you said for the accreditation of the fund, we want to understand a little bit better what it means.
If I may chime in, I think what the person is trying to ask is whether the fund has to be 100% funded in order to have accreditations of interest to the accounts. And if that is the question, then the committee has a policy that takes into consideration when doing the accreditation. That policy has a minimum of 90% funding in order to be able to provide accreditations. And as a matter of fact, in the last 2 semesters, there has been accreditations, even though small, but while the fund was not yet 100% vested. Of course, the idea is to reach the 100% vesting. I don't know if that clarifies the issue.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Posted by Manuel. Good morning. Would it be possible to share how many participants left the pension plan before they were fully vested in the past 5 years?
I certainly think, I just want to make sure I'm not muted. Sorry. I certainly think that's something we can gather and provide. But we would have to gather that information. And we can certainly, I'll jot that down to consider providing that to this audience.
And the next question is, si podemos tener una copia de las dispositivas. We have a copy of the presentation. I think certainly we can
Absolutely.
circulate that to the participants and in general today. And then we had a question I think was answered in the chat already, asking if someone goes to the office they're in the office every day, and what days can they pass by the office for consultations about their fund. And the answer is que estamos de lunes a jueves en la oficina y viernes estamos remoto. Cuando quiere pedir puede pasar por la oficina.
Okay.
The next question received was, is it possible to contribute more money monthly than what is automatically deducted from payroll?
Please repeat that, Martin.
Is it possible to contribute more money monthly than what is automatically deducted from payroll?
No, not to our plan. That person can certainly consider some sort of IRA should they want to save more for retirement. But our rules and regulations are pretty stagnant with the retirement fund or retirement plan being the 7% and 14%, or they're in the Provident plan with the 5% and 5%.
The next question is one that was received in advance, which it was, if a person chooses to withdraw a percentage of the retirement in cash at the time of retirement, I understand that of that sum in cash, the contributions made during the time working with the G4 visa are exempt from paying taxes. Is this correct? And the answer provided was that, yes, that is correct. Contributions, not interest, is exempt from paying taxes during your tenure as a G4 visa holder. The next question also received prior to today's meeting was, how early in advance should we set up a meeting with the retirement and pension fund staff to inform about retiring and to review different options? And the answer is that you may reach out to the pension fund office whenever you'd like to understand your retirement options. Usually participants come 2 or more months prior to retiring, and to please give them a few days notice to schedule a meeting from staff with the pension fund office. The next question, also received in advance, was, will health insurance benefits and coverage continue for the staff member and spouse? I'm assuming this means upon retirement. Answer, the pension fund office understands that as long as the participant is eligible for a pension, they will be eligible for retiree health insurance through the OAS. The next question received was, can the staff member, a U.S. citizen, opt to stop the insurance and just have Medicare after turning 62 if retirement happened at an earlier age than 62? And the answer is that the retiree can opt out of health insurance whenever they choose, but many retirees currently have both OAS health insurance with Medicare. However, to get a better understanding, it would be important to reach out to your OAS Human Resources Insurance representative. Next question received, what happens if a staff member stops contributing to the pension fund for more than 6 months? What are the consequences? The answer provided was, in general, for people that will remain in the organization for a long period of time, more than 3 years, the effects of the leave without pay will be minimal, even more if the person gets a pension under the 2% formula or the alternative minimum pension, since those computations do not involve the amount of money in the account. If the person was close to retirement, the effect may be a slight decrease in the pension because of the range of 36 consecutive months used in the computation of the final average remuneration. That's a fairly complex response, so I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment on that or if that's clear to everyone. Great. Can we get a copy of the presentation in Spanish? I think we can work on
We can get that. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for all your work with the fund's website for easy access to our information. Currently, it shows information on contributions updated until October 2024. When can we expect this to be updated?
Yes, thank you for that question. We just issued an email to all participants that we wanted to inform the participants that we're currently undergoing maintenance to address certain technical issues. And our team, in collaboration with the developers, are actively working to resolve these issues and update the system to ensure that all information is accurate and up to date. If you are in the system now, you'll see that it's only through October. As I mentioned, please be patient as we're working with our developers to get this updated, and we're hoping it to be very soon, and we'll notify you when everything is updated.
Next question is the link on the screen to the retirement plan portal?
It is not. The link on the screen is the access to our webpage. I can also share in the chat what the portal site is, although it is under maintenance mode. So keep in mind it won't be active at this time, but I can certainly share the link to the portal.
Thanks for the meeting. The growth of the funded ratio has been positive. However, it has not progressed at the expected pace considering the historical market growth. Given this, what factors do you believe are influencing the slower than expected growth of the funded ratio?
So I'm going to start, and then Danielle, if you have any other insight, I would certainly appreciate that insight. But certainly our funded ratio is at about 93%. We are still trying to recover from 2022, but keep in mind that even though that the investments are slowly recovering, we still have our future obligations to both current retirees as well as participants, and that also continues to grow. So they may not grow in equal parts, but certainly they're both growing. And the reason why it is at 93%, we've the committee will look into changing a few aspects of whether it be what the assumptions are, right, on our actuarial evaluations. Those will need to be reviewed and adjusted. What we're going to credit participants is always going to be reviewed and adjusted as accordingly. But we are currently doing our actuarial valuation as for the period that ends December 31st, 2024. And when that review comes out, it's probably going to come out at the end of March. We'll get to know what the actual is. And if it's higher than 93, I think that's a great sign. And if it's lower than 93, it just means that we may need to adjust a few things, whether it be in our asset allocation of our investments or certain assumptions that we handle with the actuaries. But keep in mind, anything above 90 is considered very healthy, especially when some of the U.S. public pension plans out there are at 75, 80%. And they're calling that healthy. So we as a fund, or historically, we like to say something 90% or above is considered healthy. So I think that where we stand right now is good. We always like to reach 100% to get to a nice soft spot. Danielle, anything else that you may want to add in this situation?
I just wanted to mention something because I don't know if I understood the question correctly, but there is an issue whether there is a match between the increase in the portfolio and the rate of increase on the funded ratio of the plan, and why the funded ratio doesn't increase as much even though the returns in the markets are good. And I want to put this very simple example. If you have $1 and there is a decrease in the market of 50%, now you have 50 cents. If you have 50 cents and you want to go back to the dollar that you had before, you need a rate of return of 100% because you gain 50 cents over 50 cents. Every time that there is a decrease in the market implies that the recovery is difficult because you have to get first back to the levels that you were before that decrease. And that's one of the reasons why there is not a match in how the funded ratio gets compared to the returns that we had in the market. To that, you have to also consider that the liabilities keep increasing all the time. You saw the chart in the presentation that Jeanette did, in which we have a steady increase in the number of pensioners, and also the cost of living adjustments that happen to the participants have an impact. So basically, on one side, you have the issue that you have to recover the assets. On the other side, you have the issue that the liabilities always keep increasing. So that's the reason why there is a mismatch on the recovery. I don't know if that clarifies the issue.
Thank you very much for those answers. And I've taken note that perhaps I was speaking or someone was speaking too quickly. I will slow down. The next question, I understand that the pension fund is managed independently. However, I would like to know what happens with the fund and the pensioners if the OAS suffers a huge financial hit or it just disappears. Will we be still confident that we will continue getting our pension?
Sure. I'll answer this question to the best of my ability. There would be a closure of the OES. It would certainly present a special situation. At that time, the pension committee would have to decide whether it wishes to continue to operate or maintain the fund's treasury secretary position as an independent unit, or whether the administration of the pension payments would be transferred to a financial company or an insurance company, for example, maybe a Northern Trust or Fidelity or whatnot. But we can maintain our independence. And because we operate as a trust, we invest in assets in various investment banks, and diversification is always very important to maintain the integrity of the portfolio. Having said that, that is why we do our actuarial evaluation to ensure that the estimated liabilities that they tell us we have, that we're able to maintain that for the life of the retiree and then their beneficiaries' remaining life as well. So even, in short, should I say in short, even if the OES were to close their doors, the fund can stand on its own. Hopefully, again, that answers your question in the short term. Again, Danielle, or maybe Bill, should you have anything specific on that, please feel free to chime in.
Yes, Jeanette and everyone, this is a subject that nobody wants to talk about, obviously. But it's not the first time it's ever come up. The OAS has been through, at least through my association with it, which runs now 45 years, has run through periods where it was thought that the organization was on the brink of closing, particularly during the 1980s at times. And so it's not the first time that this has been contemplated. What Jeanette said is absolutely germane, and that is that it is a trust fund. It's an independent fund. It's not something that would come into play in any kind of imagined bankruptcy proceeding. This is an asset that belongs to the participants and the pensioners. What the fund does provide very specifically is the pensioners have a preferred status in the fund. So if the organization were to close and the fund were to continue existing, there would be some obligation on the trustees to assure that the pensions are accounted for. And that could be done a number of ways that Jeanette has explained some of them. One would be that the trustees continue supervising the fund. Another one would be that it's turned over to a receiver, an independent receiver, that assures that the fund continues paying out the pensions and its other obligations. A third would be for a decision to be made to purchase equivalent pensions from another vendor like Fidelity or Vanguard or TIGF or whatever. Some of these vendors that do manage pensions, and it's something that, in fact, that I will reveal that Jim Harding and we looked into in the early 90s when it was another stress point for the organization, that possibility. So those possibilities exist. I think pensioners can be fairly well assured that they will receive their pensions from the fund unless there is a total collapse in the United States financial system and world global system. And that's, nothing is guaranteed, as we say in life, except death and taxes. And so I think your pension is fairly well secured. I hope so. I took a pension when I retired. Danielle did as well. We're all firm believers in the fund. We could have taken all our money out. In fact, I could have taken all mine out with tax reimbursement. I chose to leave some in just because of solidarity with the fund and because I think the fund is a great investment vehicle. And even if you have other pensions, IRAs and so forth, the pension fund is a good hedge. And believe me, my experience is that the committee is a much better management of your investments than most others who claim they can do so. So we encourage people to take pensions. We have confidence in the fund, and we have confidence that the pensions of those who take them will be completely satisfied. But we can't guarantee it 100%, as I said. The only thing we can guarantee is your eventual death in the obligation to pay taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for those detailed responses. Next question, I think, was just answered. It had to do what happens if the OAS closes, what happens to our pensions. So the next question was, una vez que cumple el tiempo requerido para comprar los 5 años, ¿el tiempo para comprarlo está abierto o es un tiempo específico? And Francisco posted a response that el tiempo para realizar la compra está abierto hasta el último día de servicio. No hay un periodo específico para completar la compra una vez que se cumplan los 5 años requeridos.
Exacto.
The next question from is, if time allows, could you explain or clarify how the provisions for involuntary separation would apply to persons with fixed-term contracts who are not fully vested? Would they receive 100% of both employer and employee contributions, even if not fully vested, in a situation where their contract is terminated before the date currently indicated in the short-term contract?
If I heard that correctly, they're on a fixed term contract. There is an expiration date on that contract, right? So basically, if they were told by the organization that they were terminated and it's prior to that expiration date, they would be, and I'm sorry, they were terminated against their will or their desire, they would fall under the being able to get 100% of their personal and institutional credits. But this, again, this is a very special, I guess, case or situation where we'll look at each case on its own. Everyone has a contract that expires at various stages of the year or various month ends. We also need the approval of our pension committee. We present the case to them and they will approve whether or not that special case is approved. But yes, it would refer to any participant who is a staff member and they are terminated against their desire prior to the expiration of their contract.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
I believe the next question was already responded to earlier. Is it possible to contribute more monthly than what is deducted? So the next question is, para los expatriados contribuyentes en el fondo, ¿aplica también el impuesto al interés devengado? And I'm not sure I understand the terminology in Spanish.
Hopefully we can get some clarity.
Yeah,
on
let
that.
me see if I understand that question. If you're not a U.S. citizen and you're not a permanent resident, you go back to your home country, the taxability of your pension will depend on the laws of that country. Most countries do not tax pensions. Some have threatened to do so, and some do. And we don't know the law of all the countries, all the member states. That's changing. We don't monitor that. So if you go back home to your country of origin or expatriate to another country and you're not a U.S. citizen and you're not a permanent resident, the taxes on the interest, if you're receiving your pension, it will depend on the local laws. You won't be subject to U.S. taxation on that pension. In fact, Danielle, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we make any reporting to the IRS about persons who are not citizens and not permanent residents. So there's no record that you'd be getting this pension. Different story, of course, if you're a citizen, a U.S. resident, permanent resident. If you're a permanent resident, you're taxed as a U.S. citizen, and everything that's said previously about this subject would apply. Many people do retire here, and they take up permanent residence, or they're here for 183 years, and then we get into 183 days, excuse me, or more on the day they retire, and then we get into very specific situations, which we encourage people to see their own tax advisors. Sometimes we can give some general advice as to the situation with the condition that you go see your own tax advisor as well, because each situation is different.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Bill. Appreciate it. There was just a request to please post this meeting in your website so it is available to watch it again. And then a question, could you explain the 2% rule?
Sure, I'll try to explain it. Short and sweet, but with as much detail as I can without going too extensive. So the 2% formula is a pension option that you have upon retirement. And what the 2% formula means is it takes 2% of your final average pensionable remuneration for each year of your participation up to 30 years. After the 30 years to 40 years, that percentage goes from 2% to 1% and 2/3. So what the 2% formula means that it takes the 2% of your final average pensionable remuneration for 30 years. And then it also takes into consideration your years of participation in the plan, and then of course the average pensionable remuneration. With all that being said, if you're prior to the age of 65 and you meet the rule of 85, you get your full pension, meaning there is no actuarial correction or reduction. If you do not meet the rule of 85, there is an actuarial reduction. It's a percentage because it considers you as being too young and taking out a pension earlier than the requirement, and therefore the actuarial correction is placed on that pension because you now have a longer time period that you'll be collecting your pension. Of course, age comes into play, as well as several of our actuarial tables come into play. So if you're curious about how the 2% formula works in your particular situation, please feel free to reach out to our office. Again, it's very specific to each case based on age, years of participation, what your salary's like, which of course, or should I say your grade and step, which then tells us what your pension remuneration is. So a lot of factors go into play. But what the 2% formula is a pension benefit option that you have, which includes the rule of 85. Of course, the pension is a lifetime pension and includes an automatic 50% of the pension to be received by your spouse upon your passing as a retiree. So hopefully in a nutshell, I know that was a lot, in a nutshell, that helps you understand what the 2% formula is. But again, please feel free to reach out to our office.
And there was just one more question I think was also answered in the chat, which was if la tesorería también está de lunes a jueves. And the answer is that la Secretaría de Tesorería está en la oficina los jueves, pero su disponibilidad varía debido a reuniones con gestores de inversión, actuarios, auditores y asesores en otros días. No obstante, siempre podemos agendar una reunión con ella cuando sea necesario.
Thank you, Francisco.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I wanted to double check to make sure any of the participants didn't want to take the floor to ask a question or post any more additional questions. Okay. That being the case, then I will give the floor, I think, to Dante for some closing remarks. I didn't know if Jeanette or Daniel or Bill, if you had any other comments or remarks to make before we move to close the session.
I do not, other than thank you again for participating. Hopefully you found this as helpful as possible. Again, we all don't know what the future holds, and I think things are changing fairly rapidly. You know, you have the trust in us to help you with any and all questions. Again, because of the extremely high volumes of emails, calls, chats that we get, and there is 3 of us in the office. We will do our best to answer you as quickly as possible. And if you'd like a meeting, please let us know. We're very happy to schedule it.
Ok, Mari, si me permites, entonces, muchas gracias a ti por moderar esta reunión. Muchas gracias a Janet, a Daniel, a Bill, también por todos estos aportes tan interesantes, tan explicativos y tan claros. Y ya como lo dijo Janet, tanto tomo el nombre de la Secretaría de Tesorería en el sentido de estar siempre a disposición de todos los miembros contribuyentes y también de los que ya están pensionados. Y en lo personal, y a nombre mío y de Mari también, como sus representantes, a disposición siempre, tanto en los buenos como en los malos momentos. Y una palabra final, simplemente desearles un feliz día de San Valentín a todos. Creo que este es un día muy especial en que refuerza ese compañerismo que debemos tener todos los que trabajamos por esta organización. Muchas gracias y que tengan muy buenas tardes.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.